don't hesitate. Don't wait. You don't know what tomorrow holds. So I don't want my headstone to say, I wish I would have. Be more. Don't be satisfied with how you are. The best thing you can be is curious. Always be curious, because that's going to make you be more.
Hey everyone, my guest today is a Wonder Woman warrior, a master communicator, a thriver with grit and humor, a storyteller whose life experience hits deeper than most books ever will on a shelf. She's overcome cancer 3 times, built a business from scratch, runs a PR firm, and she's also launched a community called Trying Not to Die. Yes, that is actually the name, and has recorded over 1,100 episodes of her podcast. She's a wife, animal lover, and a positive, humorous voice for those looking for a little levity in life. Deb Krier, welcome to More Than Before. So great to have you on.
Oh my gosh, Nathan, we're not going to have any fun. This is going to be a 5-minute interview. But truly, I am honored to be on your podcast. I was listening to some of them, and they are wonderful.
Well, it's so great to have someone else who's been on the other side where I am right now. You understand all the hard work that goes into it. But
tons.
It's always nice because when the other person is a conversationalist that can kind of pilot the conversation, you know you don't have to worry about too many crazy things happening.
Yeah. Well, we could do crazy. I can do crazy.
Oh, I know you can. So you grew up in Walden, Colorado, which is over 8,000 feet in elevation, which, not to mention, the elevation is actually greater than the population there.
By a lot. By a lot.
Oh, by
I
a lot.
32 in my graduating class.
32.
Oh,
we won't ask you where you were in the graduating class, but
well, I was number 2.
No, of course you were.
By 1 grade. By 1 stupid grade.
So what was childhood like for you? What was your early childhood memories like?
I mean, it was idyllic. Now, granted, it was a while ago. It was long before Al Gore invented the internet. No computers. I mean, we had 3 television channels. But yeah, it was fantastic. You had to go over, and still do, a mountain pass to get out of there. And so we got snowed in, quite a bit, and that was not a problem. But, I walked to school. It was, 1 or 2 blocks. If I was ever out late, Mom would just make a phone call or 2, and they would know where I was. And it really was absolutely perfect growing up, because we had so much freedom. We could go and we could have fun. We didn't have to worry about the weird, icky people in the world. We could just be kids. And I think that was so cool to be able to grow up like that.
And you had a very special bond with your parents too. You were really close with them. What were some of your early childhood memories like with your parents?
So I'm an only child, because they broke the mold.
Because you were the best child.
I was. My dad was quite a bit older, but he and I was Daddy's little girl. And he passed away in 2009, so it's been quite a while ago. But I remember at night. Now, he did not get past the 8th grade. And that was actually pretty far for him to go. But he was an avid reader, and he instilled that in me. And I still remember being a little girl, and every night he would read to me. Now, he did work some nights, and so he wasn't always there. But and if he missed too many nights, then I'd get pretty bent out of shape. But, I like reading Misty of Chincoteague and all of those fun books, and I really remember that. He did work a lot, so he missed a lot of my activities. He worked for the state of Colorado, and so he did miss quite a few of my, after-school events and things like that. But I knew he was there in spirit, and that was always so much fun. My mom was an incredibly independent woman. I mean, she was out in the middle of nowhere in Colorado. But she taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet, and really just, I didn't need anybody to help me be what I could be. But it was expected that I was going to be the best that I could be. And I never questioned that. It was like, oh dear, no one would want to make Tolly Gore mad. The one eyebrow would go up, right? Right. And so, but yeah, we traveled a lot. My dad got off a month every summer. and
Mm.
they had a trailer that they pulled behind their Jeep. And so we would travel. And I mean, even as like a 16, 17-year-old, wasn't quite as cool, but I was smart enough to know just how true a gift that was.
Mm.
And so it really was a very special time.
You spent a lot of time in the outdoors and a lot of time
Mhm,
with your dad in the outdoors, didn't you?
mhm. I
What
did. So
was
he worked for it changed its name multiple times, but basically the Division of Wildlife. And so I would go with him. I mean, this they didn't care if kids went, it was pretty safe. Some of the coolest things. Now he didn't do this because he didn't like this. They would come up to do counts of antelope, deer, whatever, and you did those with a helicopter. And so the helicopter landed across from our house in the field, and I was this little bitty little kid, and they would pile me in, and away I'd go in the helicopter, and I could count to 10. And so I'd 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. We never had more than 10 of whatever it was, right? Um, but, because of what my dad did, he had a very flexible schedule. So,
Mm.
he could take me fishing. He could do, whatever. Especially, when I was a lot younger. And it really was just very cool because, aside from anything else, you talk about a beautiful place. I mean, it's,
Mm.
high up in the Rocky Mountains. It really was absolutely beautiful there.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean,
Mhm.
did you spend a lot of time in the reservoir over there, like Walden Reservoir? Because that area is just
No,
gorgeous.
and thank you for doing all your research. I know that you do that. Um, it was when we would go fishing, it would be further out. Now I didn't hunt. That was just not my thing. I did get my hunter safety license, and they took great delight in watching me get knocked on my keister when I fired the rifle because nobody bothered to tell me that little bitty kid, great big gun, whoop, right? But yeah, I wasn't into hunting, but we would go fishing. But we typically went more up in the mountains. Walden is kind of in this valley and then completely surrounded by the mountains. So it's out there in the middle of the sagebrush.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it was very cool.
So, what was your desire as a little kid? Like, I always love to ask the question, and maybe it gets redundant for some people, but I'm always fascinated. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Hmm.
Like, what was the picture that Deb
Hmm.
wanted to be?
Well, I actually had two things, and it was funny. I'd forgotten about one of them until not long ago. Um, I wanted to be a musical performer. I wanted to
Mm.
sing on Broadway, right? And do all of those things. And then the flip side of that, because, you might need to make money, I wanted to be a defense attorney. I was going to be Mrs. Perry Mason. And thank God Kathy Bates took that over. But yeah, I wanted to go into law school, and I'm at the tail end of the baby boomer generation. And that was not really encouraged,
Mm.
l young girls did not do that. And I remember my mother going, "What do you mean your counselor told you that?" Um, you know, but I like to argue with people, big surprise, right? And so I just wanted to be a defense attorney, and I thought
Mm.
that looked fun because all I knew of it was what you saw on TV.
Mm.
And so it really did look very interesting, and I sang, all the way through college, but, and was good? Maybe I could have been good enough. I don't know. Things kinda changed from there, and I just moved on from that.
Yeah, I find it interesting too that your dad's little nickname for you, his little singing bird or songbird. I
Mhm.
find that really
I
fascinating.
Yep, yep. When I would
Just
sing, he would say I was twittering like a bird. And I don't know if that was positive or not, but, mhm, yeah,
well,
he would tell me,
I think it's a really cool balance of
mhm,
of voice of loving to
mhm,
sing, but then
mhm,
also this being wrapped around in nature
mhm,
and just how
mhm, mhm.
beautiful life was
Right.
growing up.
Oh, it
I am
was.
curious
Mhm.
because you were actually kind of reserved, weren't you? Growing up, you weren't necessarily the outgoing type.
No, I was always outgoing. I was the
Oh, you're
nerdy
always
kid.
outgoing.
I was the person that the teacher would go, "Go sit down." Don't and I always sat in the front row, and I still do. I mean, I'm one of those people. I suck up no matter what the class is. Um, and but I also knew that sometimes being the nerdy kid was not going to be popular.
Mm.
And so, but I was also this little scrawny thing, and my mother thought I needed to be in sports. I was on the teams, but oh Lord, no. I they should have named me Grace, because I was not. I could be dribbling the basketball and fall over the lines, right? And so, but it was kind of a weird combination of this well, my mother called me Debbie Go Gore because my maiden name was
Hmm.
Gore, because I was always just here, there, everywhere else, right? Big surprise. But in a lot of ways, I still was really shy,
Yeah.
and just uncertain as to, because I was not the cute kid. I wasn't the cheerleader, all of those things. And so it was kind of an odd combination.
Yeah. So then you graduate from high school. What takes you out of Colorado?
So, initially, it's really funny, I just got a text message on my phone from somebody in Walden, of all things, right? Um,
They know
and
that we're talking about them.
yes, and actually, I had texted her earlier today, and they're supposed to get 9 inches of snow, and so she was telling me if that happened or not. But so initially, I went to school in Kansas. I went to Baker University, and I loved it. There was a private university, kind of between Topeka and Kansas City. And it
Mm.
was far enough away from my parents and from Colorado, but I had my grandmother and people like that in case I needed to do laundry and, have a good home cooked meal. So yeah, I went away to Kansas to college.
Mm. And what were some of the early lessons from jobs that you had? You've had some pretty interesting jobs in your life.
Mhm,
I love specifically the camping
mhm.
campground one, but like, what are some of the ones that
Yeah,
kind of stir your mind of like, man, I
mhm,
can't believe I ever did
right,
that job.
right. Well, the campground one was actually, I had it for 2 summers when I was in college, and I worked in campgrounds. So I worked for the Forest Service, cleaning campgrounds, you know, just doing nothing. That was basically, now the silly fools actually gave me a chainsaw at one point, and that didn't work. They took the chainsaw away from me. Um, but it was interesting because I was the only girl. It
Mm.
was, that was back when that was very definitely a very male field, and they were all college boys. And there I was, this gawky, awkward thing, but I, at that point, that was one of the first times where I really thought, "I can do whatever I want." Nobody can
Mm.
tell me you're the girl. And so that was really very interesting. I worked for a candy broker one time, for several years. There's a way that convenience stores get cases and cases of candy. It's a candy
Yeah.
broker. My dad thought that was the greatest thing in the world because I got cases of candy. So that was very interesting. I'm not sure. Actually, I really learned important on that because my boss was a bully. He was not a
Mm.
nice man, and he would yell and he would throw things.
Huh.
And I went up to him one time and I said, "You get to call me a B word once." And he kind of looked at me and I said, you do it again, and I own your company." And he did call me that word once, and all I did was hold up one finger. And he knew, uh-oh. This red hair is enhanced now, but it's always been red. But I worked for the American Cancer Society. That was one of the absolute best places I could be. I was a
Mm.
lobbyist for a while. That was very
Really?
interesting. And so, but yeah, I just kind of go where the spirit moves.
I love that. And you're so good with your words. I'm curious about like communication. Where do you feel like you
Uh-huh.
really wrapped your mind around communicating and
Mhm,
learning to communicate well?
mhm. My first job where I was paid to do it was with the American Cancer Society, and I
Mm.
had been working for a company called Advanced System Technology. I was the stupidest one there. They all had PhDs in statistics. But really nice men, right?
Yeah.
Really nice guys, super, super. I mean, it was very much a family type of thing. And they wrote computer software for the federal government, primarily for NASA and for Navy. And I managed the office. But I knew that I was not going to go get a PhD in statistics because two and two don't make four for me. And so somebody said, "Well, why don't you want to get paid to do what you enjoy doing?" And I volunteered doing marketing
Mm.
and things like that. And so I went to work for the American Cancer Society, and it was probably the best place to learn how to do media relations and communications and everything like that. Because, aside from anything else, you knew what you did was really going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and it's so interesting too. I also have a follow up with that too, because I find that a lot of people who have the type of levity that you have, that
Mhm,
are good on their feet, that
mhm,
have a comedic bone inside of them, they grow up at least listening or hearing
mhm.
some type of comedy. Like,
Right.
I mean, maybe it's different for you, but
Mhm,
I have my comedy legends in my
mhm,
head of the
mhm,
people who I loved
mhm.
and who I
Right.
still love to this day, kind
Mhm,
of the classics. But
mhm,
who were
mhm.
some of those people that you kind of got to hear early on in life that really you got your
Mhm.
humor bone from?
Right. Well, I mean, there is that little redhead, there was Lucy, and I'm a little past Lucy, but yeah, I mean, it was just she was phenomenal, and I knew that she ran everything. I mean, she was in charge, all of those things. I also really liked MASH.
Mm,
And it's interesting because, I remember one of the things that they asked the Hawkeye character one time, they said, "Why are you always joking?" And he said, "Because if we didn't, we would cry."
mm.
And that really is a big part of, especially with, with the twists and turns that my journey has taken. That really is something, but Robin Williams, oh my gosh, right? You could not, I mean, Mork and Mindy. I mean, clearly, they did
Yeah.
some of it in Boulder, and, yeah, Mork was just somebody that, and I think with any of them. They made it look so easy. Now that said, I don't think I could do stand up. I think I would get up
Yeah.
there and go himiny 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 himiny. But it's but yeah, they and I mean even some of the people like Eddie Murphy and and Saturday Night Live started when I was probably in college,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean it just they made it look so easy, but you knew that it was also very serious with what they were doing.
Yeah, I love that you say that because it's true that like with comedy there's a little bit of a dark side to it.
Mhm,
If
mhm,
you have a little bit of the dark side and
mhm.
understanding, it's almost tongue in cheek that if you
Right.
understand the dark
Mhm,
side of it, you can
mhm,
bring levity to it. And
mhm,
that's what I think a lot of the world needs nowadays
mhm,
is we need
mhm.
more levity. There's too much
Oh, heavens.
seriousness. We no
Oh,
one laughs. I
no.
can't remember who said it, but the first day you grow up is the day that you have your first good laugh at yourself.
Mhm.
And it's true.
Right.
Like you
Mhm,
can't take yourself so
mhm,
seriously.
mhm,
Now, you brought up one of your crucible moments here, kind of going into it.
mhm,
You had a huge crucible moment in your life. You're working for the American
mhm,
Cancer Society, and to be on that side of helping people, but then all of a sudden, you go in for your screening
mhm,
and
mhm.
you get the news
I
that
get the
no one
news.
ever wants to
Mhm.
hear. You the
Right.
news.
Right, right. Well, and I
Walk
also
us
work for
through
an
that.
oncologist, and so I tell people, I know just enough to be dangerous, right? I recognize the words. Um,
Hmm.
and so, yeah, it's a little over 10 years ago, I did my routine mammogram, and I didn't even get home. And I'm 5 minutes from the hospital, and they called and said, "You need to come back." And I knew that wasn't that I hadn't smiled pretty. There was a reason. And, part of your brain says, "Well, the equipment malfunctioned or something." And the other part of your brain says, "Uh-oh." And so I did. I went back and repeated my mammogram, and they said, "Hey, you've got cancer. You've got stage 0 cancer," which means we're not gonna worry about it. I
Yeah.
didn't get an oncologist. And it was, "We're just going to monitor this." We did a couple biopsies that were really, really fun. They heard me yell in the waiting room. And I was like, "Ow." Um, and then my doctor said, "You know what? I think we need to actually get a little bit more invasive and pull some lymph nodes." Because I had an MRI, and it came back showing that my lymph nodes on the bad side were lighting up.
Mm,
And but I also had, because at that point I was living here in Georgia, and my entire arm was poison ivy. I had this horrible poison ivy infection. And so they thought,
mm.
well, that's probably what it is the lymph nodes were responding to that infection. And she came out of surgery and she said, well, 8 of 12 lymph nodes were positive. So I
Mm.
went from stage 0 cancer to stage 3 because that meant it had already spread. And then I got the oncologist, right? I hadn't even done that yet. But I very distinctly remember when she was telling me this, I looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, I don't have time for this." And she looked at me like, you know?
I don't think you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
you actually do get a vote, right?
Yeah.
You're the only vote that counts.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was like, ugh, this, and so then I was going to tackle it like I did everything else, just jump right into it. And that kind of bit me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very, very interesting. And actually I found out that my cancer had spread ultimately on you get your online charts, right? Those are great
Hmm.
things now. You can log in. I logged in and the word metastatic jumped out at me. And of course, metastatic
Mm.
means that it has spread. And I was like, no, 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 must be the wrong person's. And it wasn't. It was mine.
Wow. It's crazy too. And so you also jump into treatment and
Hmm.
you start going through all the treatment,
Hmm.
and you're just one of those special gals, right?
I
Like
am. And
I'm
mhm, I am.
you know,
I'm
I
special.
can
Hmm.
relate with that to an
Hmm.
extent.
Hmm.
I'm always the person that, if we have some kind of tech issue or something,
Hmm.
I'm the only person that's ever had the issue.
Hmm.
They've
Hmm.
never seen
Oh,
it
yeah.
before.
Hmm.
You got to
Hmm.
send
Yes.
whatever product
Hmm.
it is back.
Hmm.
Oh, you're the
Hmm.
only one that have this.
Right.
Well,
Hmm.
1% chance of having a
Hmm.
reaction
Hmm.
to the
And that
chemo,
was me.
and
Yeah.
that was you.
Um, and so I had a treatment. I was supposed to have a whole course of chemotherapy. But it was a massive dose. It was 8 different drugs, took 8
Mm.
hours to do it because now that was not that was actually very standard. When you're starting chemo, they give it to you very, very slowly to see,
Mm.
make sure your body is going to tolerate it. And so I had all these different drugs. Halloween was in there, trick or treaters, all this stuff. And then I started feeling kind of bleh, right? Just
Yeah.
bleh, and I was thinking, well, duh, you just had all this chemo. And I send my husband off to work. He checks in periodically through the day. How you doing? I kept saying, I felt like I'd had 8 different chemo drugs.
Yeah.
And then in the middle of the night, it took a turn. And I told him, I said, we need to, we need to call an ambulance. And so he did. And here I am, chatty Cathy with the fire department, right? As they're carting me down the stairs. Um, and they load me up into the ambulance. And like I said, I'm 5 minutes away. And we stopped at one point. And the reason why I knew there was a problem, I had a pain that was incredible. And I had a pretty high temperature. And,
Mm.
and I knew, okay, this is not normal. And so, I'm in the ambulance and I'm just chatty, chatty. And we stop. And I said, why are we stopping? And the very nice EMT says, well, it's a red light. And I said, oh, I don't get lights and sirens. And I swear to God, that was the last thing I remembered for hours. I mean, I hit rock bottom.
Wow.
And so what had happened was the drug literally ate a hole through my colon. And the stuff that's in your colon is not supposed to get into your body.
No.
And so I went into septic shock.
Yeah.
And I was, my heart rate was about 200. I thought I could fly, because like, right? Um, and I was in and out of consciousness and all of this and they didn't want to really medicate me because they needed to figure out what's going on. And so I had this horrible pain. And I remember the oncologist was out in the hall with the surgeon. And he said, I see no reason to operate on her because she will be dead by night. Because
Mm.
I kind of skipped sepsis. I mean, it was in there, but I went over it quickly and I went into septic shock. And septic shock about 75% of the time is fatal. Obviously she got in his face and I remember thinking, hello, I get to vote. Hello, hello. Um, and so they did, emergency surgery. That was very entertaining. And but they had told my husband she will not make it.
Mm.
And so he got to call my mother and say, you got to get here from Kansas and it won't be fast enough. I can't imagine that. Can you imagine? And
Yeah.
and so in long story short, I was in the hospital 7 weeks. Lots of different surgeries, all sorts of different things. The cancer is probably not going to be what does me in. It's going to be from having septic shock, and because your organs shut down, and so my
Yeah.
kidneys are like, we don't want to work anymore. And so, but yeah, I mean, it was just in and out of ICU, in and out of surgeries. And for the most part, I'm still Miss Jibber Jabber. They knew that things were not good when I would be very quiet.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, like at one point I remember, because now I have the bad arm, the cancer arm, and you don't get pokes on it. So no IVs or anything like that because you have no lymph nodes. So if something happens, your body can't fight it off. And so I only
Mm.
have the one good arm. And I remember at one point going, "You know, Mom, I had 8 IVs and that one arm, and I was like, and like they were splits and things, but was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. And I had this really pretty cool private room, you know, and but that was where trying not to die initially the name came from, because
Yeah.
my mother, being my mother, somebody came, somebody went, fabulous medical care, and I got the disapproving mother frown, and I went, what? And she said, "You did not say thank you." And I said, "Oh, for God's sakes, Mom, I'm trying to not die here." And that was kind of the start of that was, I couldn't say thank you. I was trying to not die.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was interesting. But yeah, I made it a goal that I would be home for Christmas, and I was home on the 23rd, and thank God for Amazon because I was able to get Christmas gifts for people.
Wow. It's funny because, throughout life, there are certain people, my father's one of those where I feel like he should have a punch card for surgeries. Like,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
you get 30, you get
mhm,
an extra one on the
mhm.
house, right?
I
You've,
know,
you've,
yeah. Mhm,
you've gone through so many surgeries. You've
mhm,
gone through so many procedures.
mhm,
I'm curious, like what has that taught you about life? Because when you are constantly in and out of the
mhm,
hospital, when you're constantly going from procedure to
mhm.
procedure, when you're looking at your body and you're going, "What in the world is going on? Like, let's get it together.
Yeah,
Come on, guys."
this is not
Uh,
me anymore, what the heck? Mhm,
yeah,
yeah,
bionic. You're Wonder
mhm,
Woman.
mhm,
Uh,
yeah.
what what does that teach you about life?
I think one of the biggest things was, and I talked to a lot of other cancer patients who are not Miss Special. I mean, that complication that I had does happen less than 1% of the time, and at that point, I was the only one who'd ever survived it. I
Mm.
still might be, I don't know, but that was
In
10
fact,
years
I
ago, so
think your
hopefully they've
oncologist.
I
I
know.
think your
They've written
oncologist had.
papers about me and all sorts of things.
Well, I
Um,
think you had said
mhm,
that, the reason why you survived was because the
mhm.
patient before you had died,
Yes, the patient before
right?
me had
The
died,
last one.
and yeah, and so, she knew what it was, and so she was able to tell him, "This is what's going on." But I think that the biggest thing is you feel out of control,
Mm,
just completely and totally. And so anytime you can get something back, you do that. And one of the things I did, I had a cardiac event. I had several other things. I got the whoop 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 people that came in twice. That was really fun. You're in there and they're telling you, now just stay calm. And there's like 20 people in the room, and they're all, but so at one point I had about 10 doctors that would come
mm,
in the morning and do rounds. And I didn't know who they were. And for a good portion of that time, I was pretty out of it. I mean,
mm,
your body sleeps to heal. And so I slept an awful lot. But the parade would come through and they'd ask me questions and they'd leave. And I'd think, uh And so when my brain started working a little bit more, I remembered that I made them come in and I had this giant window. Like I said, I had a very cool room. And they would go and they would stand and look out this giant window. And so they were behind me. And I would say, "No, no, no, I need you to come and stand at the foot of my bed so I can see you."
mm.
Otherwise, I'd just fall asleep. And so they'd come and they all did. I mean, none of them said no or anything like that. They all came and I said, "And before we go any further, I need you to tell me who you are and what your specialty is, because then I know what questions and things like that I need to be saying. And
Yeah.
I had one that said, "Well, I have a name tag on." And I said, "Show it to me," and it had gone under his lapel, and so he apologized. Um, but yeah, to get that control back, and one of the doctors came back and pulled up a chair and sat down. I thought, "Oh," and he was my infectious disease specialist because, you're in the hospital that much, you catch the cooties that are in the hospital. And he came back and he sat down. I thought, "Ah, this is it. I'm dying." What was it? Elizabeth? Elizabeth? And he said, "I have to tell you that what you told me earlier today is probably the best thing anybody has ever told me." And I went, "Huh?" And he said, "My ego assumed you knew who I was and what my specialty was." He said, "It never occurred to me you didn't know who I was." And he said, "I will never again walk into a patient's room without telling him who I am and what my specialty is." And I thought,
Mm,
okay, I did good. But yeah, it's you do everything you possibly can to get back some semblance of control.
mm.
Even if it's just, here's what I'm going to eat today, or I'm not going for that walk, or any of those things. It's because we need that. We need to be in, as my husband puts it, in charge. But yeah, just in control to know, hey, this is me and these are my decisions that I'm making.
I find that interesting because I think there's two kinds of people. There are those that understand that we should be nice to other people, that
Mhm,
we
mhm,
should see other
mhm,
people as human
mhm.
beings, and we should
Right.
want to
Mhm,
find them interesting.
mhm,
And then there are those that are just hyper aware.
mhm,
And you
mhm.
seem like a hyper aware person
Right.
of, especially with your podcast, because you
Mhm,
interview so many people from
mhm,
different aspects of life,
mhm,
that you truly do become hyper
mhm,
interested in that person, that you
mhm,
really do want to learn.
mhm.
And
Right.
when you are in that mindset of learning, when
Mhm,
you're in front of someone that maybe doesn't have that awareness to
mhm,
even like the
mhm,
minimum of like, hey, what's your
mhm,
name? What is your
mhm,
specialty?
mhm, mhm.
There's
Right.
almost this
Mhm,
sense of you want to be able to
mhm,
teach them to
mhm.
connect
Right.
deeper.
Right.
How has that lesson of being able to connect really opened up doors in
Mhm.
your life?
Well, as much as I jibber jabber, there is that saying, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth," right? So you should be listening twice as much. And so I try and do that. Do I always? No. But I still remember, like, one of the nurses I was talking to, and she's one of the charge nurses, and now this will tell you what it was like. They would come in my room and do their paperwork. They liked coming in, they liked sitting in there with me, and nobody knew where they were. And usually I was asleep, so it didn't matter, but they would come in there, and I remember she and I were talking, and she was, a nurse, and had been a practicing nurse for many, many years. And we were talking about the different types of nurses, and she said, "Well, yeah, there's basically 2 types. There are those where it's a job, and that's great." And she said, "And there are those that it's a calling."
Mm,
And I thought, that really is whatever we're doing in life. Is it just the job, or is it a calling for us?
yeah.
And I think it really is important just to listen to, you really pick up on body language a lot more. When you're just laying there and you can't do anything, I mean, you can really pick up on a lot of things from people. So I would ask the staff, "Hey, what's going on today?" Because when you're there 7 weeks, you get to know this one has a kid and this one has a dog, and all of those things. Because they tried to give me the same staff so that we didn't have to go through the whole spiel of this was what was wrong every
Mm,
time. But yeah, it was kind of a safe place for them. They could come in my room and kind of hide.
mm. So what was the idea behind Wise Women Communications? Like what
Mhm.
what sparked that idea?
So at one point I worked for a company called ING, and I did corporate communications for them, and they were the seventh largest corporation in the world. Boy, you talk about having fun budgets, right? Um, and from there I went to the firm where I was a lobbyist. But it was kinda like, "Ugh, what do I wanna do when I grow up?" And I'll be honest, I'm still trying to figure that one out. But I decided I wanted to start my own communications firm, to specifically because they hired me back at ING because they'd never filled my position, but they didn't need somebody full time, so they hired me back to just do bits and pieces, right? A project here, a
Mhm.
project there, and I thought, "How many other companies are like that?" They don't even need a full-time agency. They just need somebody to come in and do this, and do that website, and do this, and do that, and so that was where we started it. And then I started thinking, what the heck do you call it? And I was, I didn't want to call it my name. I didn't want to call it Rocky Mountain, any of those things. And I was very active with the Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, wonderful group. And I remember them saying that if at all possible, they wanted to work with other women business owners.
Mm.
And now, Wise Women is comprised of consultants and it's about 50-50. And of course, we will work for male clients, everybody's money's green. But it really did make me think, well, how can we do that? And of course, we are wise women. And so, we're not just, we're wise women. And so that was where that name came from.
Mm. So when did you switch from the PR and communications to
Mhm.
really wanting to focus and help other people through the cancer diagnosis and that cancer journey?
Mhm. I still do both, because wise women pays the bills.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, right?
Yeah. Well, you
I
have your
I did as yeah,
philanthropic arm, and you have the
yeah.
one that,
Oh,
you
yeah,
still love and you still
yeah,
do. Yeah.
yeah, I was a gig person before gig had been invented. Um, and so, it was entirely the fault of my business coach, the wonderful Kathleen Caldwell, who knows my long and detailed story. And it was still about 4 years ago or so. We're on a Zoom, and she shook her finger at me, and I'm like, "Oh, what did I do?" And she said, you didn't go through everything you went through without using it to help others." And I thought, "Ugh, but I don't wanna be cancer girl, right?" Funny thing aside, right, several months ago, they had that whole thing on Facebook where you could create superheroes. Of course, I created Cancer Girl. Um, but yeah, I didn't wanna do that, but I realized I was already doing that.
Uh,
And always had. I mean, that was one of the things my mom had always insisted on was you volunteer, you give back, you do what you can. But doctors would call me in when they had students, or new patients. I'm always the person in the infusion room. I am still in active treatment. I go in every 21 days. And so I'm the person that's going around and you need water, you need crackers. COVID was horrible. I hated it. The nursing staff in there have other things to do. If I can get somebody a bottle of water, I'm going to get them a bottle of water and free the staff up.
yeah.
And so, that just kind of came from there. And so we launched Trying Not to Die, and, I'm a marketing person, right? So it's gonna be tryingnottodie.com because, that's what you do with those
Yeah.
things. But it was taken. Somebody had the name. I mean, can you imagine how rude is that? That somebody had tryingnottodie.com.
I mean, you had gone
And
through
s
all of this just to
I
get the
know.
.com, and
Yeah, I tracked him down. I made a reasonable offer, and she wanted me to add a 0 to it, and I said, "No." Was in my brain. I wasn't gonna spend $5,000 to buy a URL just, and so, you go to GoDaddy and you type in "Trying Not to Die," and then it gives you all these other things that you can add on, and it
yeah.
gave us .live, and it was like, right?
Yeah.
And so now I do own .com now, I she eventually let it go. But because, I mean, we type that. That's just I don't care, force a habit. Yeah, and so
Yeah.
we made it an acronym, and so it is live. But yeah, so it's trying not to die.live.
I love it. It's so uplifting too. I'm curious. I know a lot of people listening right now they at least know one person that has been touched by cancer,
Mhm.
and I'm curious. What's like one of those things that most people don't quite understand about the process of going through cancer?
Well, when you're going through it, I think it really is the lack of control, and you want everything to be as normal as possible. If you're supporting someone, whether you're a real direct caregiver or even just a friend, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say, and so you either ignore it, and then it's like, no, no, this, or you ask way too many questions, or you say, Nathan, just tell me if you need anything, and you go, mm-hmm. Because your brain can't grasp, you're dealing with having cancer. But if
Yeah.
I said, "Nathan, can I bring you dinner tomorrow night? Can I take your kids to the movie?" Then you can go, "Yeah, I can do that." If it's a workplace, then you can say, "What can I help you with here?" So be specific. And it is okay to ask about it. but I've been on this journey now for 10 years, and like you said, 3 different cancers because I have to be special. Um, and, and it's okay for people to ask.
Yeah.
Usually I'll just say, "I'm doing good," you know, and most of the time, they don't wanna know the details. They don't wanna know they certainly don't wanna know the ickies, and I don't wanna talk about the ickies. But don't act like it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
because it does, and my full diagnosis is stage 4 triple positive metastatic breast cancer. Stage 4 is not considered curable.
Mm.
Now, 10 years and those little buggins have yet to rear their head up again, which is good, right? Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But, yeah, don't act like it doesn't exist. It's okay to just say, "How are you feeling?"
Mm.
And then, let them choose if they wanna tell you a little bit more about it. The hard part as the patient or the warrior, as I like to say, right? Because 'Cause I'm in a battle for my life.
Yeah.
I don't always want to start the conversation with, "Well, poor me." And I don't wanna complain, I don't wanna whine, but it is still there. It's kinda
Mm.
that elephant that's in the room. Like, one of the things my 3rd cancer was thyroid cancer, and when they removed my thyroid, they damaged my vocal cords. Like, I can hear right now that my voice is going. You probably don't because you haven't known me for 60 years, right? Um, and but yeah, somebody says, "Hey, what's going on? You sound a little hoarse." Then I can say, "Yeah. Now, okay, here's the thing. All the way back to the beginning, I can't sing anymore.
Mm.
When they damage my vocal cords, I have 2 notes and they are the wrong notes. And so yeah, it's like, okay, this is fun. But yeah, don't act like it's not there, but you don't have to dwell on it either.
One of the things I love about your journey though is that you are so positive, and in fact, one of the things I think is quite remarkable. You actually remind me a lot of a really good friend of mine. She's actually from
Mm.
Colorado, and she's gone through many similar
Mhm, mhm,
cancer diagnoses,
mhm, mhm,
traumatic brain injury
mhm.
too. And she is also this positive
Mhm.
little beam of light wherever she goes. And
The
you remind me of
Energizer
her so
Bunny.
much.
Mhm, mhm.
But
Right.
one of the things that you and her both have in common is that you look at these things as a blessing.
Mhm,
And I don't know a lot of people that would say, "You know
mhm.
what? Cancer was a blessing to me."
Right.
Why would you say that cancer has been a blessing for you
My
in your
brain
life?
shorted out. No, it's
When I
and
was filling
now
it
now
out, my
yeah,
fingers
right.
didn't type right.
Yeah, yeah. Now, here's the thing. I am not always Miss Perky Perky, right? I have
Yeah.
bad days. My husband knows when I have bad days. Um, Nobody else does. I'm not going to do that. And now, some of my friends can tell when I'm extra tired, things like that. But yeah, you just what is it? Put on a happy face, right?
Mm.
Um, and so, but it is very much about your attitude as to how you're going to get through it. Way back when I worked for that oncologist, now this was 35 years ago or so that I worked for the oncologist. He would say 99% of it is in here, and he would point at his head. If you think you're gonna die, you're gonna die. If you think you're gonna live, you're gonna live. Now, the prognosis might not have been good. I mean, they might have only lived 5 days, but how did they live during that time period?
Mm.
And so, yeah, it's you wanna stay as upbeat as you can, and we all know humor and laughter helps us heal,
Yeah.
and so how can we do all of those things? And I got us off the question. I don't remember what the question was.
Well, the question was is
Mhm,
why would you say that
mhm.
cancer was a
Ah,
blessing to you?
yes, yes.
Because most people would say, "Well, this is
Yeah,
my curse that I carry
yeah,
now." And you
right.
go, "Well, this is a
Mhm,
blessing. This is
right.
for me to make me
Yeah.
better."
I mean, it is kind of a catch-22 because I have chronic pain, and several other things, and I am at about surgery number 35, and so those are not fun. My scars have scars, but it is also, I think, probably the biggest thing is it has truly made me value life
Mm.
and know that it could end tomorrow. I mean, I've come close. There were 3 times that they told my husband, "Mm-mm." And yeah, it's so live your lives. Don't put stuff off. Value the people that you are around. I mean, I never would have met you, right? If it
Yeah.
hadn't been for this. And that's kind of one of the cool things too, is who has it brought into my life. And and that's just been so fun to be able to see that. I don't put up with toxic people. No, I'm just not gonna do it. I don't really watch the news an awful lot. I know what's going on out there. I don't need to know much more about it. And I also, but on the flip side of that, I tell people I love them. I tell them I appreciate them. Even if it's back to, just like my mother, you need to say thank you. I do. I try. Now, do I always know? But I really try to show my appreciation, my gratitude towards people.
I love that. Your husband has been with you for over 32 years now.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
curious, how did you guys first meet? And how has having him in your life made you more of the person that you feel
Hmm.
like you were created to be?
So he lived in Denver, and he was my best friend from age 5. He was her next door neighbor, and she had a Kentucky Derby party. And the rest is history. In fact, I remember telling her, "You can tell Tom it's okay if he calls me." You know?
And he backed the
um,
right horse.
he did. I think he thought, "What the heck am I getting myself into?" Um, I know I wouldn't have survived this without him. He has been just an incredible caregiver, put up with a lot. Because when I am not feeling good, I am not a nice person. And obviously just the stress of all of it, and having to do that, and having in a lot of cases to be doing everything, and because I'm just pitiful. But yeah, I couldn't have done it without him.
Mm,
I kind of joked before about being a warrior. It says it on my arm. It says right here that I am a warrior. But you also have to have your tribe, right? No warrior stands alone. And my husband is the biggest tribe member that I have.
mm.
And that's just always there.
Why do you think it's so important to have a tribe? Because we hear
Mhm,
about tribes, we hear about
mhm,
have your inner circle, and I
mhm,
think a lot of people go, yeah, 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 yeah. I've got my inner
mhm,
tribe, I've got my
mhm,
circle, but most people, I don't think they actually
mhm,
intentionally put the right
mhm.
people around them.
Right.
The people
Mhm,
that are around them they're there because of
mhm,
proximity, not
mhm,
because of choice.
mhm.
And I'm
Right.
curious, why is that
Mhm,
such an important thing in your
mhm,
mind, especially going through everything that you've been through in life?
mhm,
Why is it so
mhm.
important to have the right people
Right.
around you?
Well, I think one of the things to remember is if they're not the right people, get rid of them. I fired doctors. That very first surgeon that said, "Mm." Now he did 2 surgeries on me. He did that initial one, and then he did one several days later that was 7.5 hours long.
Mm,
And he actually couldn't make it through the surgery. He had to have somebody else come in. But I didn't like him. Just did not like him. And I thought, I don't have to deal with this man. There's a reason he worked with people when they were unconscious. And there were several of my doctors that I fired along the way. But, and there are some friends that it's like, I'm just gonna keep it at a distance. But, you know, eh, for one thing, we shouldn't go it alone. But we do many times when we're sick. No matter
mm.
what, I'm just gonna be in this little ball curled up by myself. I remember somebody posted on Facebook one time. I'd written a post about cancer, and this person I didn't know because most of my posts are public. I'm one of those people. And he responded, I have no idea who he is. And he said, "I've never felt so alone in my life." And it broke your
Mm,
heart. I mean, it was just like,
yeah,
but people who did not know him, did not know me, responded. What can we
mm,
do? You can reach out to us. And so it is about that. When I was so sick in the hospital, oh, I looked bad. I was bald. That one treatment did my hair in. And I had an NG tube and I lost 30 some pounds. So I was quite the delightful person. Um, and I didn't want anybody to visit me. I did not want
mm,
people to see me like that. And it was probably, several weeks into my stay where I thought, no, you are a social butterfly. You are a social creature. You need people to come visit.
mm.
And it was hard on them. I mean, like I had some that couldn't handle it. And that was okay. That nothing wrong with that or with them. But yeah, you need people. We are social creatures. And
Yeah.
so we need people to be supporting us, even if it's just to say, "Hey, can I bring you dinner tomorrow night?"
I think it's really impactful because, in the world that we live in, I feel like most of us are just on these islands because,
Mhm,
with social
mhm.
media, we look
Right.
out and we see
Mhm,
everyone's life is just so
mhm,
perfect, and then we look at
mhm,
ours and we're like, oh man,
mhm.
my life is falling apart, or fill
Right.
in the
"Oh,
blank, or
I don't
you know.
have the right blouse or haircut," or mhm,
Well, but isn't that true?
mhm,
something like a health scare, or not even a
mhm,
scare, but actually going
mhm,
through that for yourself, it
mhm,
actually really does put teeth
mhm,
to life to say,
mhm.
you know what, you only get
Right.
this one shot to
Mhm,
live it.
mhm.
And
Right.
why not enjoy it?
Mhm,
Why not
mhm,
love the people that you're around?
mhm,
Why not
mhm,
put the right people around you?
mhm,
You have such
mhm,
this
mhm.
this fun energy about you. I would love for you to tell everyone about the adventures of Track Krier. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
and he's not here.
he's
He's wandered off on an adventure. So Track is a little stuffed animal, and that came about when I was in the hospital.
Mm.
I had 2 very close family members who couldn't be here, and they sent little stuffed animals, right? And, and I still have them. They're on a shelf where the dogs can't get them. Um, but they went with me through the hospital, all these various things. And so I was not alone when I had those. And you mentioned that I do dog shows and all of these really weird things. And so one time when we were out and about, we found this little stuffed. He's about 4 inches tall, beagle, and his name is Track. He really does say that on his thing. And so everywhere we go now, Track goes. He has his own hashtag, Tracks Travels. And if I dare to go somewhere without him, people get annoyed. Um, you know,
He's the
and
star.
and well, and it was funny because we took a cruise to Alaska earlier this year. Took my aunt and uncle and we went to Alaska. And so we were looking through the pictures just yesterday. And I started laughing, and my husband's like, "What?" So it's the final night, and it's the whole crew, and they have come out to say thank you and all of those things. So it's, yeah, everybody on the crew, and there in the middle of it is Track. One of them had come and stolen him, and so all of these people taking pictures on the cruise have the crew and Track. You know, but it's just this fun little thing. It's very silly, right? But yeah, he I don't take selfies. I take pictures of Track. And so but yeah, I mean it's kind of a fun little thing to do the flat Stanleys or whatever it is that people do. But yeah, Track has his own fan club.
I love that. Well, he has his own social media accounts too, so you could
Mhm.
you could look up Trek
Mhm.
if you want to.
Yep. Yep.
I have absolutely loved having you on. I do have one more question for you here
Mhm.
before we wrap up.
Mhm.
But for all of you guys listening, do yourself a favor, go deeper with Deb. She is a powerhouse behind the Wise Women Connections. You can find that in the show notes here.
Mhm.
That is helping brands get seen, heard, and
Mhm.
taken seriously. She's also the creator of Try Not to Die .live. You
Mhm.
could also look at .com too, but go with live. Live just sounds better.
Yeah.
And then also she has an amazing podcast that you should go and binge if you want to listen to a great podcast. It's the Business Power Hour with over 1,100 episodes. Actually, it's growing by the hour, it feels like. It's just
Yes.
continuing to
Leaps
go
and
up. She's
bounds.
recording one right now as we do this.
Mhm. We
She's
should do
interviewed.
that sometime. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be an interesting concept.
Mhm. Mhm.
But she's
Hmm.
interviewed everyone from entrepreneurs to industry disruptors, and she brings the same type of humor and fire that you guys heard today here on this podcast. So make sure you go check that out. Deb, you have this, and everyone has listened thus far knows this. You have this incredible sense of humor. And humor truly does bring so much levity to life. Why is humor so powerful when it comes to breaking down walls and
Mhm.
connecting with other people? How has
Mhm.
humor been a connector for you in your
Mhm.
life?
Well, sometimes it's been inappropriate humor, right? Um, but yeah, it's hard to be grumpy if somebody's laughing. One of my goals always is, and I'm at a doctor once a week, is to make my staff laugh. And so now what is your name and date of birth? Well, I'm Anastasia Beaverhausen. And they look at me and now I don't do it to brand new people because I don't want them going, "Oh my god, I brought the wrong patient back." Um, and they've decided I'm Princess Anastasia Beaverhausen, so, one must do the queen wave. Um, but yeah, it's and there are documented medical reasons why laughter is good for you.
Yeah.
It, raises serotonin, lowers your blood pressure, all sorts of things. Even fake laughter will do that because your brain doesn't know that you're faking it.
Yeah.
And so, it's okay to laugh. I mean, I mentioned Robin Williams earlier. I mean, think of Patch Adams, right? Making children laugh. And so, in this world where it's grumpy, there are bad things. We're not trying to hide those bad things, but can we make somebody laugh instead of cringe?
I love that. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that because I just love that answer. What does it mean to live a life that is more than before? You've grown so much. You
Mhm,
you have
mhm,
certification after certification. You've got numerous different coaching backgrounds and different, like, it's amazing to hear all the things that you have your
mhm,
fingers in. But what does it really mean to be more than before today,
mhm,
more today of who you are than it
mhm.
was yesterday?
Don't be little. I mean, maybe that's the thing. Now, I've always been kind of this outgoing personality and everything, but don't hesitate. Don't wait. You don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't want my headstone to say, "I wish I would have." And so just be more. Do I need naps? Right before I went on the air, you'll love this. I was sound asleep and I woke up and thought, "Holy cow, what time is it?" And I was just like, "Oh my god, I've slept through the interview." But, I did. I really did. Be more. Don't be satisfied with how you are. I told somebody the other day, I said, "The best thing you can be is curious." Always be curious because that's gonna make you be more. Be more than you were yesterday, and tomorrow be more than you were today.
That's so good. Deb, you are such a bright light in this world. I thank you so much for being on the show. For all of you listening, make sure you go check out all of Deb's content. And remember to like and subscribe this episode. And make sure you share it with a friend because someone needs a good laugh today. Until next time, remember to be more, see more, and experience more than before.